Brian from Screenfiles.com and Review. What I'm looking at today are seasons 1 and 2 of Day 5, which is a series I discovered on Tubi. Day 5 is a series created by a production house called Rooster Teeth. And I don't really know what that means, in the sense that I don't know where Day 5 originally aired. Is there a Rooster Teeth channel? Is it on some other network and it was produced by Rooster Teeth? I have no idea. But it is a very well done, beautifully shot science fiction / horror series. And it revolves around an event that happens where if you sleep, you die. There is no naps. There is no sleeping for people. And so what happens if you don't sleep for extended periods of time, you eventually begin to hallucinate. You eventually become psychotic. And you will eventually die. Sleep is a necessary process for human beings. Well, for most animals, in fact. Sleep is a necessary thing. It's not an option. It has to happen. Or that animal will eventually suffer for it. Though, as I said, in Day 5, you can't sleep. So, once people understand what's happening, they begin to try to find coping mechanisms. And one such coping mechanism is drug usage. And that's really interesting because there's a character in Day 5 who is a drug addict. Now, that's something that is typically looked down upon. Though in Day 5, this guy becomes a survivor. Ironically enough, his drug usage becomes a survival tool because he is very well acquainted with drugs, how to use them, how to administer them, how much to administer, and so on. It's a really clever twist. And I appreciate a series where drug use isn't demonized. And in fact, in the world of Day 5, it's encouraged, or you will die. It's not an optional thing. And what the series does that I think is particularly clever is that it escalates. In a sense that initially people were starting to drink stuff like coffee, energy drinks, anything to keep them from sleeping. But as the series progresses, people start using harder and harder drugs. This is because, once again, they have to stay awake. And at some point, things like coffee begin to not work. So they start talking about cocaine. And I don't think they mentioned heroin. But if someone could function on heroin and it managed to keep them awake, that would be an option. Structurally speaking, Day 5 is not unlike a zombie series in that people are fighting to stay awake, doing whatever drug they can find to have that happen, but at the same time also to figure out why what's happening is happening. It's a fascinating twist on essentially the zombie type genre because, as I mentioned earlier, people cannot function without sleep. It will affect you in really bad ways if it goes on long enough. And so this core group are trying to score drugs however they can, while conversely trying to avoid more psychotic elements. At a certain point, before the event started, at least in the United States, televisions gave a message similar to the American broadcast system test, saying that do not sleep, you will die. So the question is, where did that message come from? For the first season, a group of survivors tries to narrow down where that broadcast came from and to determine if it was the epicenter of this condition that they're having to live with. It is such a well done show. And what I particularly like is that it's funny. It is a black comedy, which is to say there's very little deliberate humor. The people involved tend to be on the sarcastic side. And like most television shows, everyone seems to have the right thing to say, which can be irritating, but in the case of Day 5, it works particularly well. As the series progresses, particularly in Season 2, we come to learn that there is an organization behind the event. And we begin to learn of their motivations behind what's happening. That was somewhat of a letdown for me. Not the idea that there was an organization behind it. After all, something had to cause it. Just the idea that it becomes a little bit, I want to say, stereotypical of these type of shows. That being said, that's a relatively minor nitpick, and it works well in any case. And as I mentioned, there are 2 seasons of Day 5. I've looked online about this, and apparently Rooster Teeth, the production company that produced it, was unable to produce a 3rd season. Supposedly they're working on it. Well, to be fair, I don't think anyone knows what they're doing, because Season 2 ends on a bit of a cliffhanger, which kind of sucks. I think they could at least get another 2, maybe even 3 seasons out of it. But as I said, Day 5 hasn't been canceled. The production company behind the series, Rooster Teeth, seemingly had a fallout of some of the people involved, and they couldn't find the money to produce another season, which at least leaves open the possibility that we might get more. This is probably one of the most interesting series in the zombie subgenre. Once again, it is not a zombie series. There are no Walking Dead in it. But it's very adjacent to the zombie series. It's very similar, structurally speaking. And there might be a chance that we get another season. And I hope that's the case. It is a funny, darkly funny, but funny little series. And I think it deserves at least another 2 seasons. Now what do you think? This is Brian with ScreenFiles.com and Review. Do you agree, disagree? Let me know down below. And as usual, consider a like or a follow. Peace.